3 years after my husband abandoned me with signed divorce papers and a note saying he was tired of living with a deaf wife, I found an unconscious stranger trapped inside an overturned car on a freezing winter night. I had no idea that the injured man whose life I was about to save was Kane Bellamy, the most feared Mafia boss in the city, or that meeting him would change everything I believed about love, loyalty, and the kind of woman I deserved to be. My name is Sadie Cole. I had been working as a trauma technician at Westbridge Medical Center for almost 3 years, and that night, I was already more than an hour late getting home. The hearing aid in my right ear whistled as the hospital doors slid shut behind me. I adjusted it beneath my hair and hurried across the nearly empty parking lot, gripping my medical bag in one hand and protecting a small white cake box with the other. The winter wind cut through my thin jacket. My feet ached after a 14-hour shift. Dried blood marked one sleeve of my blue scrubs, and the battery in my left hearing aid had died sometime before midnight. I should have felt relieved to be leaving, but the words I had overheard in the break room followed me across the cold pavement. Management only praises her because they feel sorry for her. The woman who said it had been standing less than 10 feet away from me. She believed I could not hear because my back was turned. People often made that mistake. I was partially deaf, not completely deaf. Some sounds reached me clearly. Others came through broken and distant. If someone spoke while facing away from me, I sometimes had to rely on context or ask them to repeat themselves. Cruel words, however, always seemed to find a way through. Less than an hour earlier, the same coworker had nearly missed an elderly patient's internal bleeding. The man had undergone a routine procedure that afternoon. When his blood pressure dropped, everyone assumed he was weak because of his age. I noticed the color fading from his fingertips. His pulse felt thin and irregular beneath mine, and the right side of his abdomen had become firmer than the left. I asked for the senior doctor. My coworker rolled her eyes and told me I was creating panic over nothing. I asked again. When she ignored me, I went directly to the doctor myself. The scan showed blood collecting inside the patient's abdomen. He was rushed into surgery within minutes. Before I left the unit, the senior doctor stood in front of the team and said, "Sadie may ask you to repeat yourself, but she notices what most people miss the first time. That patient is alive because she paid attention." I should have felt proud. Instead, I saw the looks around the room. One person smiled politely. Another looked away. The co-worker who had dismissed me folded her arms and waited until the doctor left before whispering that I enjoyed making everyone else look incompetent. I pretended I had not heard. I had become very good at pretending. I pretended not to notice when people deliberately spoke behind me. I pretended not to notice when they exaggerated their lips as if they were talking to a child. I pretended it did not hurt when someone described me as inspiring in the same voice they used for a patient learning to walk again. I did not want pity. I wanted people to face me when they spoke and judge my work by the same standards they used for everyone else. I reached my car and placed the cake carefully on the passenger seat. It was chocolate with white frosting, my father's favorite. My mother always claimed it was too sweet, then asked for another slice. Things at home had felt wrong for weeks. My father had begun receiving late-night calls he refused to explain. My mother checked the front window before opening the door, even when she knew it was only me. They stopped talking whenever I entered a room. Each time I asked what was happening, they told me not to worry. My father had worked for Drago Senior Living and Medical Supply Group for almost 11 years. He handled compliance records for their care homes and medical distribution centers. He rarely discussed his work, but the company's name appeared on every paycheck, employee badge, and holiday card that entered our house. Lately, even mentioning the company made him tense. I had bought the cake because I wanted one peaceful evening with my family. I wanted my parents, my 6-year-old daughter Lily, and my 10-year-old brother Noah to sit around the same table without whispered arguments or locked doors. I wanted to believe that if I brought something sweet into the house, the bitterness would loosen its grip. My phone vibrated before I could open the driver's door. Lily's name appeared on the screen. I pressed the phone against my better ear. "Sweetheart? Why are you still awake?" For several seconds, I heard only her breathing. "Mom," she whispered, "Grandma is crying." My hand froze on the door handle. "Why is she crying?" "I don't know. Grandpa put 2 suitcases by the front door." The wind seemed to disappear around me. "Where is Noah?" "In his room. He locked the door." "Go sit with him. He said he wants to be alone." "Tell him I said to open the door." Lily became quiet again. "Are Grandma and Grandpa leaving?" I looked through the windshield at the cake. I'm coming home. That's not what I asked. My daughter had inherited my habit of noticing the answer people avoided. I don't know, I admitted. But I'm coming as fast as I can. Mom? Yes? Are you leaving too? The question struck a place inside me that had never fully healed. Lily had been 3 when her father left. She did not remember every detail, but she remembered the empty half of the closet. She remembered me crying at the kitchen table. She remembered that he had kissed her goodnight and disappeared before breakfast. No, I said. I'm coming home to you. Promise? I promise. I ended the call and started the car. Snow had begun mixing with the rain, covering the windshield faster than the wipers could clear it. I called my mother twice. No answer. My father's phone went directly to voicemail. The quickest route home followed an old road beside the river. I normally avoided it after dark, because the streetlights were unreliable and abandoned warehouses lined one side. But Lily's frightened voice left no room for caution. I drove with both hands tight around the wheel, replaying her words. Grandma is crying. 2 suitcases. Noah locked the door. I was less than 15 minutes from home when my headlights caught something black beyond the broken guardrail. At first I thought a tree had fallen beside the road. Then I saw a tire turning slowly in the air. A large black car had left the pavement and rolled onto its roof. Steam rose from the crushed hood. One headlight flickered weakly against the wet ground, and shattered glass glittered across the snow. I slammed on the brakes. The cake slid against the passenger door. For one long second I remained behind the wheel. My daughter was waiting. My parents might leave before I reached them. Noah was frightened and believed no one wanted him. I needed to keep driving. Then I saw a man's hand hanging motionless through the shattered driver's window. I had spent almost 3 years helping strangers survive the worst moments of their lives. I could not leave a man to die simply because my own life was beginning to fall apart. I grabbed my medical bag, stepped into the freezing rain, and ran toward the overturned car. Can you hear me? I called as I crouched beside the driver's side. The man inside was unconscious. Blood ran from a cut near his temple and disappeared into his dark hair. His black coat had twisted beneath the seatbelt. One shoulder was trapped at an unnatural angle, and the crushed roof had folded dangerously close to his neck. I reached carefully through the broken window and pressed 2 fingers against his throat. His pulse was weak, fast, and uneven. His breathing came in shallow, strained movements. Sir, my name is Sadie. I'm medically trained. I need you to stay still. His eyelids moved. For less than a second, his eyes opened. They were dark and unfocused, but something in them remained alert. He tried to speak. Only a rough breath escaped his throat. Don't force your voice, I told him. You may have injured your neck. His hand closed around my wrist. The grip was weak but deliberate. He looked past me toward the road and tried to form a word. I leaned closer to see his lips. No police. I was not certain I had understood him. His hand tightened once before falling away. You were in a serious accident, I said. You do not get to decide what kind of help you need. My emergency call failed twice before it finally connected. I gave the location, but the operator warned that the weather might delay the ambulance. I secured rolled towels along both sides of the man's neck and used gauze to control the bleeding near his temple. The seatbelt had left a deep mark across his throat and chest. His shoulder might have been dislocated, and the uneven rise of his ribs suggested at least one fracture. I kept talking even though he remained unconscious. You're not allowed to die tonight. My daughter already thinks everyone leaves. I am not letting a stranger prove her right. The car smelled of fuel, rain, and heated metal. I watched the crushed hood for smoke and checked his pulse every few seconds. Headlights appeared behind me before the public ambulance arrived. 2 black vehicles stopped in the road. Several men stepped out. They moved quickly, but they were not police officers or ordinary emergency workers. The man in front wore a dark coat and the kind of expression that made people obey before he raised his voice. Step away from the car, he ordered. I remained beside the injured man. Are you medically trained? Move. Not until someone supports his neck. His eyes narrowed. Who are you? The person keeping him from choking on his own blood. If you drag him out without stabilizing his neck, you could paralyze him. Another man approached, carrying a professional medical case. The first man looked at the bandage around the stranger's head and the improvised support along his neck. What happened? He asked. The car rolled at least once. He has a head injury, possible shoulder dislocation, likely rib fractures, and swelling around the throat. His pulse is unstable. He needs imaging immediately. Did he speak? He tried. No real sound came out. The man crouched and looked through the broken window. Kane? The name meant nothing to me. The injured man did not respond. "We have to move him," the man said. "Then listen carefully." I showed them where to place their hands and how to keep the head aligned with the spine. The man with the medical case followed every instruction. The other clearly hated being told what to do, but he did not interrupt again. A private ambulance arrived moments later. It had no markings and no siren. The doors opened, and a medical team stepped out with a rigid collar and a spinal board. Once the injured man was secured, I gave them a quick report. He was unconscious when I found him. He opened his eyes once and attempted to speak. His pulse remained fast and irregular. The throat swelling increased while I was here. Do not assume the voice loss is only shock. The man in the dark coat turned toward me. "Your name?" "Sadie." "Last name? Why?" "Because you treated him." "I treated a stranger after a car accident. That does not give you access to my personal information." He studied me. "Marcus Reyes." He offered his own name as if it should make me trust him. It did not. "I work at Westbridge Medical Center," I said. "That is all you need for the medical report." His eyes dropped briefly to the hospital logo on my jacket. "You should wait. My daughter is waiting for me. The roads are dangerous. So was leaving him here." I looked toward the ambulance. "Will he live?" Marcus glanced at the closed doors. "If what you did bought him enough time, then stop talking to me and use it." I turned before he could respond. My hands shook so badly that it took 2 attempts to start the car. As I drove away, I checked the mirror once. Marcus stood in the road watching me. The ambulance and the black vehicles disappeared in the opposite direction. I reached home 23 minutes later. The cake box had bent on one side, and the frosting had smeared beneath the lid. I carried it inside anyway. The porch light was on. The front door was unlocked. The house was so quiet that I could hear the faint electrical buzz from the kitchen light through my working hearing aid. "Lily." She ran toward me from the living room wearing pink pajamas and one sock. I dropped my medical bag and caught her. "Mom." She buried her face against my coat. "Where are they?" I asked. Noah stood near the hallway. He was fully dressed, and his school backpack rested beside his feet. He looked older than he had that morning. "They left," he said. "When?" "Before Lily called you." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Grandpa told me not to call until they were gone." Anger rose through my fear. "Where did they go?" He shook his head. "They wouldn't say." I looked around the room. My father's winter coat was gone. My mother's purse was missing from its hook. 2 family photographs had been removed from the mantel. On the kitchen table sat a white envelope with my name written across it. For the second time in my life, someone had left me through paper. My husband's note had been folded beside signed divorce papers. My parents' note waited beside legal documents prepared in advance. I opened the envelope under the same kitchen light where I had read the first one 3 years earlier. "Sadie, by the time you read this, we will be gone. Your father and I have spent our lives taking care of everyone else, and we have decided to begin again, somewhere new. Noah has always listened to you more than he listens to us. You know how to manage him. We have signed temporary guardianship papers so there will be no problems with his school or medical care. Do not search for us. Do not call. We need a life that belongs to us. You are strong. You will manage." My mother's handwriting stayed neat until the final sentence. The last 3 words slanted downward. "You will manage." My husband had written almost the same thing. "You have always been stronger than me. You will manage." He had packed his clothes while I worked an overnight shift. He had signed the divorce petition, given me sole custody of Lily, and left to begin what he called a real life with a woman who did not come home smelling like antiseptic. His note said he was tired of bills, children, hospitals, and constantly adjusting around my condition. He said he wanted freedom. I had spent years wondering whether another woman would have been easier to love. Now my parents had used my strength to justify leaving Noah behind. "What does it say?" Noah asked. I folded the note before he could read it. "They're going away for a while." "Because of me?" "No. Mom said you would know what to do with me." "That does not mean you did anything wrong." "She said I was difficult." She didn't mean that. You didn't hear her. The words hurt because he did not mean them as an insult. He looked down immediately. I'm sorry. I crouched in front of him. You never need to apologize for forgetting which things I can hear. I didn't forget. Then tell me what happened. His chin trembled. She whispered to Grandpa. She said, Sadie already has enough. We shouldn't leave him too. Grandpa said, we don't have another choice. Then Mom started crying again. That did not sound like two people excited to begin a new life. Did anyone come to the house? I asked. Noah looked toward the window. A black car was across the street yesterday. Grandpa told me not to look at it. Did you see who was inside? No. Why are you wearing shoes? He shrugged. I thought maybe they would change their minds and take us. Lily tightened her arms around my neck. Grandma kissed me goodbye. The cake sat near the door, forgotten. I had carried it through wind, blood, and broken glass, because I believed my family would be waiting around the table. Now the people I had bought it for were gone. Listen to me, I said, pulling both children close. You are staying with me. No one is sending either of you anywhere. We will figure out what happened. Are you mad at them? Noah asked. Yes. Do you still love them? Yes. Can you do both? I looked at the note in my hand. Apparently. Lily refused to sleep unless I left the hallway light on. Noah lay on top of his blanket fully dressed. When I asked him to change, he said he was comfortable. I knew he wanted to be prepared in case someone else disappeared while he slept. I did not force him to remove his shoes. After the children became quiet, I locked myself in the bathroom and sat on the floor beside the bathtub. I pressed both hands over my mouth and cried as silently as I could. My husband had left because he thought my life demanded too much from him. My parents had left because they thought I could carry more. Different reasons. The same empty room. I looked at my reflection and whispered, why does everyone use my strength as permission to leave? No one answered. One hearing aid had stopped working. Blood from the stranger's car stained the knees of my scrubs. My hair was wet, my eyes were swollen, and there was no one in the house who could make a decision for me. So I did what everyone expected. I washed my face and started managing. The guardianship papers were properly signed and notarized. My father had prepaid Noah's school fees for 6 months. A folder contained his medical records, insurance information, and emergency contacts. In the freezer, I found containers of soup, pasta, and casseroles. Each one had a date and heating instructions written in my mother's handwriting. One shelf held Lily's favorite macaroni. Another held the vegetable stew Noah always claimed to hate but finished every time. In the hall cabinet, I found 6 boxes of hearing aid batteries. I normally bought 1 box at a time because they were expensive. My mother had left enough for months. People who were tired of responsibility did not usually organize school records and label dinners before running away. The thought came quietly, but I was too hurt to trust it. Perhaps guilt made people careful. Perhaps they wanted freedom without leaving complete destruction behind. I went into my parents' bedroom. My mother's wedding ring sat in the top drawer beside a folded handkerchief. She had worn that ring for more than 3 decades. She wore it while washing dishes, while gardening, and even during a medical procedure when a nurse had to tape it to her finger. She would never willingly leave it behind. Fear moved through me, pushing some of the anger aside. I called both their phones again. They were turned off. I called the police and explained that my parents were missing. The officer asked whether they had left a note. When I said yes, he told me adults were allowed to leave voluntarily. I mentioned the crying, the black car, the ring, and the children. He agreed to take a report but warned me that the note made the situation unclear. They may contact you when they're ready, he said. I wanted to ask how long children were expected to wait for adults to become ready to love them again. Instead, I thanked him and ended the call. I stayed awake until morning. At 7, I called Lily's school. At 7:15, I called Noah's. At 8, I contacted my supervisor and said I would be late. He told me the department was short-staffed and asked whether the emergency could wait until after my shift. I nearly laughed. At 9, Lily sat at the kitchen table eating cereal while Noah pretended to read. I arranged for an older neighbor to watch them. Before leaving, I knelt in front of Noah. I'll be home by 6. People keep saying they're coming back. Look at me. He raised his eyes. I am going to work. I will call if I am delayed. I will not disappear. What if something happens to you? The overturned car flashed through my mind. Then I will still find a way to call." He nodded, but he kept his shoes on. Westbridge looked exactly the same as it had the night before. Machines beeped. Phones rang. Nurses pushed carts through the hallways. My family had fallen apart, but the hospital had not noticed. The coworker from the break room looked at my face and asked, "Rough night? You could say that. We covered your first hour. Thank you." She seemed disappointed that I did not argue. The senior doctor called me into the hall. He stood directly in front of me, as he always did. "The patient from last night is stable," he said. "The surgeon confirmed he would not have survived another hour without intervention." I only noticed the signs. That is what good medical professionals do. He studied me. "Are you all right?" The question was so simple that it nearly undid me. "Family emergency. Do you need time off?" "I need the paycheck." His expression softened. "Speak to me if the schedule becomes impossible." Behind him, my coworker rolled her eyes. I saw it, he did not. "Thank you," I said. Near the end of my shift, a receptionist told me a man named Marcus Reyes was waiting in the administrative office. I knew the name immediately. He stood when I entered. His coat was dry this time, and his expression remained as guarded as it had been beside the overturned car. "Is he alive?" I asked. "Yes." Relief came before I could stop it. "Can he speak?" "No." Marcus placed a business card on the desk between us. It carried the name Bellamy Private Medical Center. The injury damaged the nerves around his vocal cords. The doctors do not know whether the loss is temporary. I warned the team about the swelling. That warning may have prevented further damage. "Then why are you here?" "He asked for you." I looked at him. He was unconscious. "I told him what you did. So did the doctors. What does he want?" "He wrote that he wants to meet you once." "Why?" He did not explain. Men like him usually expect people to come when they ask. Marcus did not deny it. "You know who he is now?" I searched the name Kane. "Then you understand why the facility is private." Kane Bellamy's name appeared in business pages, charity photographs, and stories people told quietly. He owned shipping companies, security firms, restaurants, and half the buildings along the Eastern Harbor. He had never been convicted of anything serious, but everyone knew what kind of power lived behind his legitimate businesses. "I stopped because he was injured," I said. "I do not want money or involvement in his life." "Tell him yourself." I looked at the card. One meeting. Bellamy Private Medical Center occupied the top floors of a discreet building with no public emergency entrance. There were no reporters outside and no patients wandering through the halls. Security checked my identification twice. Marcus met me near the elevator and led me into a private recovery room. Kane Bellamy lay propped against white pillows. Without blood covering his face, he looked different from the man in the wreck. His dark hair had been cut away from the wound near his temple. Bruising spread along his throat and disappeared beneath the collar of his hospital gown. One shoulder remained immobilized. His eyes followed me as I entered, alert, controlled. He looked like a man accustomed to using a few quiet words to change an entire room. Now, a whiteboard rested on his lap. He wrote slowly with his uninjured hand and turned it toward me. "Marcus told me you saved my life. I did what any human being should have done." Kane looked at the words, erased them, and wrote again. "3 cars passed before you stopped." I glanced toward Marcus. "The traffic camera showed them," he explained. I looked back at Kane. Then those people forgot their humanity. I could not leave an injured man on the road to die. Kane wrote, "You did not know who I was. I didn't need to know. At that moment you weren't powerful or dangerous. You were an injured man who needed help." His gaze remained on my face. Then he wrote, "What do you want in return?" "Nothing." He watched me waiting. "Humanity is not a favor that comes with a bill," I said. "I did not stop because I expected something from you." Kane read my lips carefully, then looked down at the board without writing. For the first time since I entered, he seemed uncertain. A doctor came into the room and began speaking to Marcus about Kane's condition. "The damage to the vocal cord nerves remains significant. We will continue treatment, but Mr. Reyes should prepare for the possibility that full speech may not return." Kane's jaw tightened. He raised the whiteboard. but the doctor continued looking at Marcus. We should also discuss discharge planning. He cannot return to work immediately. Kane tapped the marker against the board. Marcus glanced over. He wants to leave. Kane's expression darkened. His lips moved without sound. Not leave, lower dose. He doesn't want to leave, I said. Both men looked at me. Kane repeated the movement. He wants the pain medication reduced. It makes him feel foggy. Kane pointed toward me once. The doctor finally turned to him. Is that correct? Kane nodded. Marcus frowned. How did you understand that? I read his lips. The doctor looked embarrassed. We can lower the dose, but the pain may increase. Kane wrote, I prefer pain to confusion. Then we will adjust it, the doctor said. After he left, Marcus said, he was asking to leave earlier. Kane wrote something and showed it to him. Earlier is not now. Marcus exhaled sharply. You see the difficulty. The difficulty is that everyone keeps deciding what he means before asking him, I said. Marcus's eyes narrowed. We know him. Then you should know enough to confirm. Kane's mouth moved slightly. It might have been the beginning of a smile. He wrote, stay for the next medical meeting. I have my own patients. He wrote, I am asking, not ordering. I studied him. One meeting, he nodded. During that meeting, every person in the room tried to speak through me. Each time I stopped them. Ask him directly, I said. He lost his voice, not his mind. When Kane wrote an answer, I read only the exact words. I did not soften his tone or add explanations. If someone turned away while speaking, I asked them to face both of us. At the end, one of the doctors asked whether Kane wanted me present during future consultations. Kane wrote yes. The facility's administrator later contacted Westbridge and requested that I work several limited hours each week as a communication consultant during Kane's rehabilitation. I would remain a Westbridge employee. Bellamy Medical would reimburse the hospital for my time. I would not become Kane's personal nurse, live in his home, or enter any part of his business. My job is to help communication, I told the administrator. I will not make decisions for him. That is exactly why he requested you. The extra pay would cover Noah's food, school transportation, and the childcare I suddenly needed. I hated that money made the choice easier, but responsibility did not disappear because pride wanted it to. I agreed. For the next 2 weeks, my life divided into exhausting pieces. I worked trauma shifts in the morning, crossed the city for Kane's consultations in the afternoon, and returned home to Lily's homework, Noah's silence, frozen meals, and unanswered calls to my parents. I slept badly. I woke whenever the house creaked. Noah continued sleeping in his shoes. Lily began drawing pictures of all of us holding hands. My parents were never included. Kane noticed that I arrived tired, but he did not ask questions immediately. Our first conversations remained short. He wrote, You are 6 minutes late. I took the marker and wrote beneath it, You are alive. Be grateful. He read my answer and raised one eyebrow. The next day, he refused medication because it made him sleepy. I wrote, You were easier to manage unconscious. He replied, You were less argumentative when I was unconscious. I wrote, That was because you could not write. A rare smile appeared and disappeared before I was sure I had seen it. He started preparing questions before I arrived. How many patients today? Did the elderly man survive? Why do you always check the door before sitting down? I answered the first 2 and ignored the third. Kane erased it without pressing me. That restraint made me more aware of him. My ex-husband had demanded answers whenever silence made him uncomfortable. Kane allowed silence to remain. He also noticed how others spoke to me. The first time a nurse delivered instructions while facing a cabinet, Kane tapped the bed rail until she turned around. When she looked confused, he pointed toward me and then toward his eyes. Face her, she apologized. He never praised himself for remembering. He simply did it again the next time. My husband used to ask, Do I really have to stand in front of you every time I speak? He had treated basic communication like a burden placed unfairly on his shoulders. Kane adjusted without being asked. One afternoon, he saw me tense when a doctor handed him a handwritten discharge note. He waited until the doctor left, then wrote, You dislike personal notes. I read notes all day. Not medical ones, goodbyes. I looked at him. You watch too much. He wrote, You notice everything. Is it wrong when I do? I turned away. He did not ask again that day. 2 days later, during a quiet therapy session, I showed him a photograph of the note my ex-husband had left beside the divorce papers. I did not know why. Perhaps because Kane had not pushed. Perhaps because he understood what it meant to lose the thing people used to identify you. His voice had made men fear him. My hearing loss had given people permission to dismiss me. He read every line. I watched his jaw tighten when he reached the sentence about being tired of adjusting around my condition. He returned the phone and wrote slowly. He did not leave because loving you was difficult. He left because he was too weak to carry his half of the life you built. I read the words twice. You didn't know him. Kane wrote, I know men who call selfishness freedom. Are you one of those men? He held my gaze before writing, I have been. And now? He wrote, I am trying to recognize the difference. No one had ever returned the shame to the person who deserved it. People told me I was brave. They told me I had survived. They told me I deserved better. Kane was the first person who looked at what my husband had done and refused to make my strength the center of the story. At home, my parents' disappearance remained a wall I could not climb. Their bank account had not been emptied. No large withdrawals appeared before they left. My father's car was found at a train station, but security footage showed only him parking it and walking away. My mother was not visible. The police opened a missing person case after I showed them the ring and explained the black car Noah had seen. Still, the farewell note made everything uncertain. They may have left willingly and separated afterward, the officer said. We need evidence of a crime. I wanted to ask whether fear counted as evidence when children could see it. I returned home and found Noah sitting at the kitchen table with his shoes still on. Did you find them? He asked. Not yet. Do you think they're dead? No. The certainty was a gift I could not prove. How do you know? Because I know them. Noah looked at the note. Did you know they were going to leave? No. Then maybe we don't know them. He was right. It hurt more because he was a child. A childcare emergency forced me to bring Lily and Noah to Bellamy Medical one afternoon. They waited in a quiet family lounge while I attended Kane's consultation. When the meeting ended, Kane passed the lounge in a wheelchair. Lily stared at the whiteboard on his lap. Kane noticed and motioned for Marcus to stop. Lily stepped behind me. This is Kane, I said. He was in the accident. The man you saved? Yes. She looked at his bruised throat. Can't you talk? Kane shook his head. Never? He lifted one shoulder and immediately winced. Lily frowned as though she personally disapproved of his pain. She pulled paper from her coloring book and began drawing. Noah stayed near the wall, watching Kane carefully. Are you a bad man? He asked. Marcus looked alarmed. Noah, I warned. Kane raised a hand, stopping me. He took the marker and wrote, I have done bad things. Noah read it. My sister says doing something bad doesn't mean you have to stay bad. Kane looked at me. I said people can make better choices. Kane wrote, Your sister sounds demanding. She is, Noah replied. Lily brought Kane her drawing. It showed a tall man sitting in a chair beside a woman holding a medical bag. Above Kane's head was an empty speech bubble. He studied it, then wrote inside the bubble, Thank you for visiting me. Lily smiled. You have nice handwriting. Marcus turned his face away, but I saw his shoulders move with a quiet laugh. Noah looked at the picture and asked, Do people leave because they stop loving you? The question changed the room. I opened my mouth, but Kane was already writing. Sometimes people leave because they are selfish. Sometimes they leave because they are afraid. Neither reason means you are not worth staying for. Noah read the sentence twice. Which reason did my parents have? Kane looked at me. I shook my head because I did not know. He wrote, You deserve the truth before anyone asks you to forgive them. Noah nodded slowly. Kane did not promise that our parents would return. He did not try to become the hero in a child's pain. He gave him the truth he could honestly offer. That was the first moment I realized I was beginning to trust him. Roman Drago entered our story 3 days later. I knew his name long before I saw his face. My father had worked for Drago Senior Living and Medical Supply Group for almost 11 years. He handled compliance records for their care homes and medicine distribution centers. Drago appeared in newspaper photographs beside elderly residents, hospital executives, and charity boards, smiling as if kindness belonged to him. He arrived at Bellamy Medical wearing a gray suit and that same practiced smile. The moment he entered Kane's room, Kane's entire body changed. His fingers tightened around the marker. His eyes followed Drago's every step. Marcus moved closer to the bed without being asked. I did not know what history stood between them, but I understood immediately that Drago was not welcome. "Kane," Drago said warmly. I heard the accident was serious. Kane wrote something on the whiteboard and turned it toward him. "You sound disappointed." Drago smiled. "I came as a friend." Kane wrote, "You have never been one." Drago's attention shifted toward me. He studied my face for several seconds before speaking. "You're Frank Cole's daughter." My stomach tightened. "How do you know that?" "Your father kept a family photograph on his desk. You were standing beside him, holding a little girl in a yellow coat." The photograph had been taken 2 years earlier at Lily's school fair. My father loved it. I'd never known he kept a copy at work. "My father is missing," I said. "I heard. When did you last see him?" Drago's pleasant expression did not change. He turned slightly away before answering, making it harder for me to read his lips. Frank left his position without notice. He had become confused about several company records. Perhaps he explained himself to you and you misunderstood. "I understand that happens with your condition." The insult was delivered so politely that everyone else in the room could pretend it was concern. A nurse near the doorway looked down. One of the doctors pretended to study a chart. I felt the old humiliation rise inside me. The same feeling I had when coworkers spoke behind me. The same feeling I had when my husband said I never listened. Kane reached for the communication tablet beside his bed. Its mechanical voice broke the silence. "Face her when you speak." Drago looked toward him. "Excuse me?" Kane typed again. "If you want to discuss her hearing, stand where she can see you." Drago slowly turned until he faced me directly. Kane continued typing. "She has earned more respect in a hospital corridor than you could buy with every building carrying your name." No one moved. Drago's smile weakened. "You have made a powerful friend, Miss Cole." "I helped an injured man," I said. "That is all." Kane looked at me, but I could not read the expression in his eyes. Drago stepped closer. "Your father also believed his actions were simple." "What does that mean?" "It means Frank should have understood that private company records do not belong to him." Marcus moved between us. "The visit is over." Drago adjusted one cuff and looked at Kane. "Perhaps when your voice returns, we can discuss the shipment you refused." Kane wrote one word. "Leave." Drago left without another glance at me. The moment the door closed, I turned toward Marcus. "What shipment was he talking about?" Marcus looked at Kane before answering. Drago wanted to move sealed medical cargo through Bellamy-controlled ports. Why did Kane refuse? Kane wrote, "The paperwork was false. He refused inspection." I looked toward the closed door. "And then Kane's car crashed?" Marcus's expression hardened. "The mechanic found damage to the brake line. It was not an accident." My father's fear, the black car outside our house. Drago recognizing my face, and the records he had mentioned suddenly felt like pieces of the same terrible picture. "My father found something inside Drago's company," I said. "And Drago knows exactly who my family is." Kane wrote, "It is possible." "Possible?" I turned toward him. He just admitted my father took company records. Kane wrote, "We still need proof of what the records contain." "Then help me find it." His hand stopped above the board. Marcus said, "You should not confront Drago or contact his company. He already knows where I work and who my daughter is." He recognized a photograph from my father's desk. "That is why you should be careful." Careful did not keep my parents from disappearing. Kane wrote, "Do not go near him alone. You are in a medical bed and cannot speak." The words came out harsher than I intended. Kane's expression closed. Regret came immediately, but I did not know how to take the sentence back without making it worse. He looked down and wrote slowly, "I am not asking you to depend on me. I'm asking you not to underestimate him. Men have underestimated me my whole life." Kane wrote, "Then you know how dangerous that mistake can be." I had no answer. At home that night, I spread the guardianship papers, my mother's wedding ring, and the farewell note across the kitchen table. Lily slept upstairs. Noah sat beside me pretending to work on math. "Did you find out anything?" he asked. Dad's employer knew he was gone. Did he know why? He said Grandpa was confused. Noah frowned. Grandpa wasn't confused. I know. He was scared. I looked at him. How do you know? He checked the windows every night. He told me that if anyone asked about his work, I should say I didn't know anything. I picked up one of the battery boxes my mother had left. 6 months of batteries. My name was written on each box. People who planned to forget their children did not prepare for their needs months into the future. Kane's words returned to me. Sometimes people leave because they are selfish. Sometimes because they are afraid. I opened the first battery box. Nothing unusual. The second contained only batteries. The third felt slightly heavier. I shook it and heard a soft click beneath the plastic tray. My hands began to tremble. I removed the batteries and lifted the tray. A tiny memory card had been taped underneath. I inserted it into my laptop. Folders appeared across the screen. Medical batch numbers, patient death reports, photographs of medicine bottles, shipping documents carrying Drago's company name. At the bottom was a video file labeled For Sadie. I stared at it for several seconds. Every important person who had left me had used written words. My husband had left a note beside divorce papers. My parents had left a note beside guardianship documents. I did not know whether I could survive another message. Then I looked toward the staircase where Noah had finally gone to bed in his shoes. I clicked the file. My mother appeared on the screen. She was sitting close to the camera, facing it directly so I could read every movement of her lips. Her eyes were swollen from crying. My father sat beside her with one hand wrapped tightly around hers. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then my mother leaned toward the camera and said, Sadie, we did not leave you. Sadie, we did not leave you. My mother's first sentence stole the air from my lungs. She sat close to the camera, facing it directly so I could read every movement of her lips. My father sat beside her, holding her hand so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. They looked exhausted, frightened. Nothing like two people preparing to begin a carefree new life. My mother swallowed before continuing. The note we left was a lie. Every word was written to hurt you enough that you would not follow us. My father lowered his eyes. And I will regret writing it for the rest of my life. I moved closer to the laptop. Noah had gone upstairs, but I could still picture him lying in bed with his shoes on, ready to run after people who had already gone. My mother looked over her shoulder as if she expected someone to enter the room. Your father found something at work. Something dangerous. My father faced the camera. Drago Senior Living was purchasing full-strength medication for its care homes, but those medicines were not reaching the patients. The genuine drugs were being moved through private distributors and sold illegally. The residents were receiving diluted, expired, or substituted medication. He paused and rubbed both hands over his face. At first I thought it was an accounting error. Then I compared the shipment records with patient deaths. People were dying after receiving medication that could never have helped them. Images flashed through my mind. Elderly patients, weak pulses, families trusting doctors and nurses to give their loved ones one more day. My father continued. I copied the records because I thought I could take them to the authorities. Drago found out before I could. My mother began crying again. He showed us photographs of you leaving the hospital. Lily outside her school, Noah playing near the house. My stomach twisted. Drago had not learned about my family after my parents disappeared. He had known everything before they left. He told your father that if a single document reached the police, the first person to pay would be you, my mother said. He knew your shifts. He knew which ear you heard better with. He knew where Lily slept. I pressed a hand over my mouth. My father leaned toward the camera. I tried to return the records and tell him I would stay silent, but he said knowledge could not be returned. He had already decided I was a risk. My mother wiped her face. We believed that if we stayed close to you, he would use you to control us. If we took you and the children with us, he would find all of us together. So we decided to make him believe you knew nothing and wanted nothing to do with us. You made me believe it too, I whispered, even though the recording could not answer. My father's expression seemed to break. I know. We made the person who loved us most believe she had been abandoned again. My mother closed her eyes. I told your father we should trust you with the truth. He said you would come after us, and I knew he was right. You would have tried to save us. You would have brought Lily and Noah into danger because you have never learned how to protect yourself before protecting everyone else. That was not your choice to make, I said to the screen. My voice shook. My mother opened her eyes again. Noah is not a burden. We did not leave him because we were tired of him. We left him with you because you were the only person we trusted more than ourselves. That was not fair to you. We knew you already carried too much, and we placed another life in your hands without asking. My father looked directly into the camera. The guardianship papers, the school fees, the meals, and the batteries were not apologies. They were the only protection we could leave without telling Drago that we expected to be gone. He glanced toward my mother. We are trying to reach an independent federal investigator. We cannot use our phones or contact anyone connected to Drago's company. If we succeed, we will come home. If we do not, the files on this card must reach someone who cannot be bought. My mother leaned closer. Sadie, the words in our note were not true. You have never been difficult to love. You have never been a burden. You are not strong because people leave you. You are strong because you keep loving people after they fail you. Tears blurred the screen. I removed my hearing aids because their faint hum had suddenly become unbearable. The room fell into a soft, uneven quiet. I could still see my parents' lips moving. My father said, "We wanted Drago to believe you hated us enough to let us disappear. We thought a broken heart was safer than a target on your back." My mother whispered, "We were wrong to choose for you. Please keep the children safe. Do not come looking for us." The video ended. The screen went black, leaving my reflection where my parents' faces had been. I sat there for a long time. Anger came first. Hot, sharp, almost easier than grief. They had lied to me. They had used the wound my husband left behind because they knew exactly how deeply it would cut. They had looked at the strongest fear inside me and decided it was the safest weapon they could use. Then relief came and it hurt even more. They had not stopped loving us. They had not left because Noah was difficult or because I had failed as a daughter. Somewhere my parents were frightened, possibly trapped, and still trying to protect us. I put my hearing aids back in and replayed the video. Then I watched it again. On the third viewing, I stopped trying to understand the records and watched my mother's face. She was not wearing her wedding ring. She had left it for me because she did not know whether she would ever come home to wear it again. I began crying so hard that I did not hear Noah enter the kitchen. I only noticed him when his hand touched my shoulder. "Was that Mom?" he asked. I wiped my face too quickly. "Yes. Are they alive?" "They were when they made the video." "Did they leave because of me?" "No." He looked at the frozen image of our parents. "Did they leave because of you?" "No. Then why?" I pulled him into the chair beside me and played the first part of the recording. I stopped before the details about death records and Drago's threat. Noah watched our mother say they had not abandoned us. His face did not change until she said his name. Then his shoulders began to shake. "She lied to me," he whispered. "Yes. She said I was difficult. She said it because she was trying to make someone dangerous believe we were no longer a family. But I believed her. So did I. Does that make it okay?" I looked at him. He deserved more than the easy answer adults often gave children. "No, loving someone does not make every way you hurt them acceptable." "Do you forgive them?" "I don't know yet." "Do I have to?" "No." He leaned against me. "Can we still want them home?" "Yes." We sat together until Lily came downstairs carrying her blanket. She climbed into my lap without asking what was wrong. For once, I let both children see me cry. I did not tell them I was fine. The next morning, I called in sick to Westbridge. It was the first time I had missed an entire shift without being physically unable to stand. My supervisor sounded concerned. My coworker sent a message reminding me that other people had responsibilities too. I deleted it. Then I called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. "Sadie? I found something my parents left." His tone changed immediately. "What?" "Records from Drago's company. Medicine shipments, patient deaths, and a video. Do not send anything electronically." I wasn't planning to. "Where are you?" I looked toward Lily and Noah. "Home." "Stay there. Marcus, do not send armed men to my house." He paused. "I was going to send one car." "No." "Sadie, if those files are what you think they are." I said no. "I will bring a copy to Bellamy Medical." "That is not safe. Neither is giving strangers my address." I ended the call before he could argue. I copied the files onto 2 drives. One went into my medical bag. I taped the second beneath the drawer where my mother had kept her wedding ring. Then I arranged for the neighbor to sit with Lily and Noah. Noah did not want me to leave. "You promised not to disappear," he said. "I'm telling you exactly where I'm going." "What if you don't come back?" "Then Marcus will call this number." I wrote it down for him. "And if he does not call, you call the police and show them the video." His face went pale. "Is it that dangerous?" I wanted to protect him from the truth. My parents had tried the same thing. "It could be," I said. "That is why I'm making a plan instead of pretending nothing is wrong." Noah nodded slowly. "Come back. I will do everything I can." Kane was in a speech therapy room when I reached Bellamy Medical. He stood between parallel bars, one hand resting on the rail while a therapist showed him breathing exercises. His shoulder remained stiff, but the bruising along his throat had faded from black to yellow. He saw my face through the glass and immediately raised one hand. The therapist stopped. Kane pointed toward the door. A minute later, Marcus brought me inside. Kane reached for his whiteboard. What happened? I placed the memory card on the table. My parents left a recording. His eyes moved to the card, then back to me. They did not abandon us. They found evidence against Drago and made us believe they were leaving because they thought it would protect us. Kane wrote, "Are they alive?" "I don't know." He looked toward Marcus. Marcus picked up the card. "I'll have the files copied without connecting them to a network." "No one changes anything," I said. "No one removes pages or decides which parts matter." "Understood." Marcus left with the card. Kane studied me. His whiteboard remained blank for several seconds. Then he wrote, "Sit." "I'm fine." He looked at me in a way that made the lie feel embarrassing. I sat in the chair beside the therapy table. Kane wrote, "Tell me." I wanted to say there was nothing to tell. Instead, I told him everything. The threats, the photographs of Lily and Noah, the medicine fraud, the cruel note written to keep me away. I told him my parents had used the same words my husband had used, because they knew those words would make me stop believing I was wanted. My husband left because he wanted freedom, I said. My parents left because they wanted to protect me. Different reasons. Same empty room. Kane lifted the marker. "Please don't tell me I'm strong," I said. His hand stopped. He erased the first word he had written. Then he turned the board toward me. "I wasn't going to." "Then what were you going to say?" He wrote slowly, "You are tired, you are hurt, and you are allowed to need someone." I stared at the words until they blurred. "I don't know how." Kane placed the board aside. He raised his hand toward me, then stopped before touching my face. Even without a voice, he asked the question clearly. "May I?" I nodded. His fingers touched my cheek. Gentle, warm. Nothing like the cold authority everyone associated with his name. Something inside me gave way. I covered my face and cried. Kane did not tell me to calm down. He did not say my parents meant well or that everything would be all right. He simply remained in front of me, his hand resting against my cheek, allowing me to be tired and hurt without demanding that I turn either feeling into strength. When I finally stood, shame made me step back. I should go. Kane's hand tightened around the edge of the table. He tried to speak. At first, only air came out. I reached automatically toward him. "Don't force it," he tried again. His throat moved with visible pain. "Sop." The sound was rough and barely more than a breath. I froze. Kane closed his eyes, gathered another breath, and said, "Sadie." It was the first time I had heard his voice. Damaged, low and uneven, but real. My name sounded like something he had fought to bring back from a place no one else could reach. "You spoke," I whispered. He swallowed painfully. The second word failed. I stepped closer. "Stop. You'll hurt yourself." Kane shook his head. His eyes stayed on mine. He tried again. "I'm here." 2 words, not an order, not a warning, not the name of an enemy or a demand for control. His first sentence after the accident was a promise he had never been asked to make. I touched his face. "Do not say things you cannot keep." Kane's hand covered mine. "Here," he repeated, quieter. I kissed him. I did not plan it. I did not think about his name, his history, or the danger attached to him. I closed the small distance between us because for the first time in years, Someone had seen me breaking and chosen not to walk away. Kane remained still for half a second, giving me time to change my mind. When I did not, his hand moved carefully behind my neck. The kiss was slow and restrained, as if he understood that anything too urgent might frighten me back into the life where I handled everything alone. When we separated, his forehead rested against mine. "That cannot be good for your throat," I said. The corner of his mouth lifted. He reached for the board and wrote, "Worth it." I laughed through the last of my tears. Marcus returned before I could decide whether I was embarrassed. His gaze moved from Kane's face to mine, then to the whiteboard. "Did I interrupt something?" Kane wrote, "Yes." Marcus looked at me. "The files are real. At least some of them. The shipment codes match the cargo Drago tried to move through Kane's ports." "What about the patient records?" "We need a medical professional to verify the pattern." "I can." Marcus shook his head. "You are too close to it. I am also the person who understands what those medication records mean." Kane picked up the board. "She verifies the medical files." Marcus read it. "You are not objective either." Kane wrote, "I did not claim to be." I looked between them. "We do this legally. No threats, no men disappearing, no using the evidence to negotiate with Drago." Marcus's expression suggested that I had removed every option he preferred. "We need someone outside the city," I continued. "Someone Drago cannot pressure through hospital donations or company influence." Marcus nodded reluctantly. "I know a federal contact who investigated port fraud last year. The files go to that person only after copies are protected." "Agreed." Kane wrote, "Sadie decides what happens to her parents' recording." I looked at him. He had power I did not understand, and connections I did not trust. But he had returned the decision to me without being asked. "The private family parts stay private," I said. "The evidence and my father's explanation go to investigators." Marcus left to make the arrangements. Over the next week, Kane's voice returned in fragments. A word during therapy, a rough sentence after several attempts. Speaking caused pain, so most of our conversations remained written. I learned to recognize the exact moment he became tired because his handwriting tilted to the left. He learned that I removed my hearing aids when I needed the world to stop asking things from me. Neither of us tried to fix the other. Kane's speech therapist wanted him to practice simple phrases. He chose phrases that annoyed Marcus. "Sit down." "Not now." "Sadie is right." The last one became his favorite. I returned to Westbridge while the records were being reviewed. 2 days later, an elderly woman arrived from one of Drago's care homes with dangerously high blood pressure and signs that her heart medication had failed. The staff assumed she had missed her doses. Her chart showed every dose had been administered. I examined the vial sent with her belongings. A batch number had been printed near the bottom. I had seen the same number in my father's files. I asked the senior doctor to hold the medication. My coworker sighed loudly. "Not everything is a conspiracy, Sadie." I did not say it was. "You have been distracted for weeks. And the vial is still wrong." "Based on what?" "The batch record lists a different concentration." She turned away while speaking. I moved in front of her. "Face me if you are going to accuse me of making a mistake." The senior doctor entered before she could answer. I showed him the vial and the copied record. He listened without interrupting. Then he ordered the medication tested and suspended every product from the same batch. The results came back that evening. The drug contained less than 1/5 of the active ingredient printed on the label. The elderly woman had not failed to take her medication. The medication had failed her. Westbridge suspended all supplies connected to Drago's distribution company. Other hospitals began testing their stock. More diluted medications were discovered. The senior doctor called an emergency meeting. This time, when he praised my work, no one could call it sympathy. "Sadie did not misunderstand the label," he said, looking directly at the co-worker who had challenged me. "She noticed what the rest of us failed to question. Our patients are safer because she refused to be embarrassed into silence." My co-worker approached me afterward. I did not know the medicine was fake. Neither did I until I checked. "You could have reported that I dismissed you." "I still can." Her face changed. I let the silence remain long enough for her to understand. "I did not protect you," I said. "I protected the patient. Do not confuse the two. It was the first time I had refused to make someone else comfortable after they hurt me. The investigation became public within days. News reports connected Drago's company to medicine shortages and suspicious deaths in senior care homes. My parents' names were not released, but my role at Westbridge appeared in one article. The photograph showed me leaving the hospital beside Marcus. That was enough to bring my ex-husband back. He appeared outside my house on a gray afternoon, wearing a coat I had never seen, and the expression of a man arriving to collect something he believed had waited for him. I recognized him through the window before he knocked. For a moment, I was back in the kitchen 3 years earlier, holding divorce papers while Lily cried in the next room. Then I looked at my daughter coloring on the floor and remembered that we had survived him. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I saw the news." "That does not answer the question." "You are involved with Kane Bellamy." His tone made the name sound dirty, though he had once borrowed money from men far less powerful and far less honest. "My work is connected to an investigation. Lily should not be around people like that." "You have not asked about Lily in 8 months. I'm her father. You signed away custody and left a note explaining why fatherhood was interfering with your freedom." He lowered his voice. "I made a mistake. You made a plan. You found a lawyer, signed papers, packed your clothes, and left while I was at work. That was not one mistake. The woman I was with is gone." I almost laughed. At least he was honest about the reason for his regret. "And now you remember your daughter?" "We were a family, Sadie. Lily and I were a family. You were only living in our house until responsibility became uncomfortable." His face hardened. "You think Bellamy will stay? A man like that does not build a life with a deaf hospital worker and someone else's child." The sentence landed where he intended, but it did not stay there. Kane's written words returned to me. "He left because he was too weak to carry his half of the life you built. You spent years convincing me that my hearing made me difficult to love," I said. "It took one honest man with no voice to show me that the problem was never my ears. It was your character. An honest man?" He laughed. "He is a criminal. And you are standing outside the home of the child you abandoned, using concern as an excuse to see whether my life became valuable after you left." The front door opened. Kane stood inside the hallway with Marcus several steps behind him. He had come for a scheduled conversation about the investigation and arrived while my ex-husband was outside. Kane did not step between us. He did not threaten him. He remained where I could see him and allowed me to finish. My ex-husband noticed him and lost some of his color. "Is he living here?" he asked. "That is none of your business. I can petition for custody. You can speak to my lawyer. You will not use Lily as a way back into a life you threw away." He looked past me toward the house. "I want to see her. When she is ready and when a family counselor agrees. Not because your girlfriend left. Not because you saw my name in the news. Sadie, you told me not to find you. I respected your request for 3 years. Now respect mine. Leave." He stood there for another moment, perhaps waiting for Kane to make the decision for me. Kane remained silent. My ex-husband finally walked away. I went inside and closed the door. My hands began shaking only after the lock clicked. Kane stood in front of me, on the side where I could hear him more clearly. His voice remained rough. "Did you say what you wanted?" I nodded, for the first time. He held out his hand. I took it. He did not tell me he was proud of me, as if I were a child. He did not say he would handle my ex-husband. He simply held my hand while my body finished remembering that I was safe. Drago's emergency licensing hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later. The State Health Commission planned to decide whether his senior care facilities and distribution companies could continue operating while the criminal investigation moved forward. The hearing would be public. My father's records showed the medical fraud, but investigators still needed proof of where the genuine medicines had gone. Kane had that proof. His shipping ledgers recorded the off-book cargo moved through his ports before he refused Drago's final shipment. They also recorded illegal payments, unregistered shipments, and financial crimes belonging to Kane's own organization. Marcus placed the ledgers on a table in Kane's private office the night before the hearing. Kane had been discharged from the medical facility but continued therapy daily. His voice had returned enough for short conversations, though speaking for more than a few minutes left him in pain. "If you hand these over," Marcus said, "Drago is finished." Kane looked at him. "And?" So are you. I stood near the window, saying nothing. Marcus continued. They will seize the port companies. They will freeze accounts. Every person who has been waiting for weakness will leave. Prosecutors may offer cooperation credit, but they will not ignore what is in these books. Kane rested one hand on the ledgers. The medicines moved through my ports. You did not know what they were. I knew the shipments were illegal. That is not the same thing. Kane's voice became quieter. Tell that to the families who buried people. Marcus looked toward me. Sadie, say something. This is his decision. You know what it costs. Yes. And you are going to let him lose everything? The question angered me. I am not going to take his choice because I am afraid of the answer. Kane's eyes met mine. He had given me that respect from the beginning. I would not deny it to him now. Marcus placed both hands on the table. You give them those records, Kane Bellamy is finished. Kane looked down at the ledgers, then said, Maybe he should be. Marcus closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked older. Then I stay until the end. Kane reached across the table and gripped his shoulder. No speeches, no promises, just two men acknowledging that loyalty meant something different when there was nothing left to gain. The hearing room was full the next morning. Families of elderly patients filled the benches. Reporters waited near the doors. Hospital representatives sat on one side. Drago entered with attorneys and the same calm expression he had worn in Kane's room. He looked almost offended that anyone had questioned his kindness. I testified first. I explained how the batch numbers connected my father's records to the diluted medication found at Westbridge. Drago's attorney asked whether my hearing impairment had ever caused communication errors at work. Everyone makes communication errors, I said. That is why trained professionals verify information instead of using disability as an excuse to ignore evidence. He asked whether my parents' disappearance had made me emotionally unstable. It made me frightened. It did not change the chemical content of the medicine. A few people in the room murmured. Drago watched me without smiling. Then Kane was called. He walked slowly to the witness table. He no longer needed a wheelchair, but one shoulder remained stiff and a faint scar crossed his throat. The room became quiet when people recognized him. Drago's attorney stood. Mr. Bellamy, are we expected to rely on testimony from a man whose criminal interests directly conflict with my clients? Kane adjusted the microphone. His voice came out rough but clear enough. You should rely on the records. The attorney looked toward the commission. Mr. Bellamy's ability to communicate is clearly limited. Drago leaned toward his attorney and whispered something. Then he spoke loud enough for the room to hear. The central accusation comes from a partially deaf technician and a man who can barely speak. I felt Kane's hand close around mine beneath the table. Not to silence me, to remind me we were both there, I leaned toward him. You do not have to force your voice. I can read your statement. Kane looked at me and shook his head. You have carried enough for other people. He opened the shipping ledgers. For the next 20 minutes, Kane described how Drago's cargo had moved through companies under Bellamy control. Each sentence cost him. His voice weakened, then returned after water and silence. No one rushed him. No one spoke over him. When the attorney tried to redirect a question toward Marcus, the chair of the commission said, Mr. Bellamy is capable of answering for himself. I saw Kane absorb the words. At last, the chair asked why he had brought records that also implicated him. Kane looked toward the families seated behind us. I spent my life believing power meant no one could make me answer for anything. He paused, one hand touching his throat. Sadie Cole stopped for a man she did not know. She asked for nothing. Her father risked his life for people whose names he never learned. I cannot claim ignorance as innocence when I chose not to ask what moved through my own ports. He turned toward Drago. He counted on no one listening to elderly patients. He counted on people dismissing her because she is deaf. He counted on my silence because the truth would cost me everything. Kane looked directly at the commission. He was wrong. Federal investigators entered the room before the hearing ended. Drago did not shout or run. He simply lost the expression he had worn for years. His attorneys surrounded him as officers took control of the evidence and informed him that he was being detained in connection with medical fraud, conspiracy, witness intimidation, and patient deaths. He looked at me while they led him away. Your father caused this. he said. No, I replied. You did. Kane's businesses began collapsing before we left the building. Accounts were frozen. Port contracts were suspended. Men who had called him boss stopped answering Marcus's calls. News reports described him as both witness and criminal. He had destroyed Drago, but he had also opened every locked door in his own life. 3 days later, my parents came home. They had reached federal investigators before Drago's men found them, and had been held in protective custody while the evidence was verified. A government vehicle stopped outside our house just after noon. Lily ran to the window. Noah remained in the hallway with his shoes on. My mother stepped out first. She looked thinner. My father followed, moving carefully as if he had aged years in a few weeks. My mother saw us through the glass and covered her mouth. Lily opened the door before I could stop her. She ran across the porch and threw herself into my mother's arms. Noah did not move. My father entered slowly. Noah, he said. My brother's face hardened. Why didn't you take me? My mother knelt in front of him. Because we were afraid the people following us would hurt you. You said I was difficult. Her face crumpled. I said the cruelest thing I could think of because I wanted anyone listening to believe we did not care. But I was listening. I know. I slept in my shoes. My father turned away, crying openly. My mother reached toward Noah, but he stepped behind me. You do not have to hug them, I told him. Not until you want to. My mother lowered her hands. You are right. I took the wedding ring from my pocket. I had carried it to the hearing and every place after. I held it out to her. She did not take it immediately. Do you hate us? She asked. No. Can you forgive us? Not all at once, my father nodded. We will wait. You tried to save our lives, I said. You also broke our trust to do it. Both things are true. We thought protecting you meant making the decision ourselves, he said. We were wrong. You knew I would follow you. Yes, you were probably right. A sad smile touched his face. That does not make what we did fair. I placed the ring in my mother's hand. Noah stays with me until he asks for something different. You do not pressure him. You do not expect the video to erase the note. We understand, she whispered. And if you are frightened again, you tell me. You do not decide that destroying my heart is safer than trusting me. My father looked directly at me. We promise. I almost told him promises were not enough. Then Noah spoke from behind me. Grandpa, can you make pancakes tomorrow? My father began crying harder. If you want me to. I did not say I forgive you. I know. I just miss your pancakes. I missed making them. Reconciliation did not happen in one embrace. It happened in small pieces. My parents rented an apartment nearby instead of moving directly back into our house. My mother attended counseling with Noah. My father sat with Lily while she drew and answered every question honestly. Some days Noah hugged them. Other days he refused to speak. They accepted both. Kane's world became smaller at the same time mine began to rebuild. The government seized several Bellamy companies. Prosecutors allowed him to remain free while cooperating, but he surrendered control of the ports, closed illegal operations, and accepted restrictions that would have once felt impossible to him. People who had feared his name began speaking about him as if he were already gone. Marcus stayed. I stayed too. Kane did not understand why. One evening, I found him alone in the office where the shipping ledgers had once been kept. The shelves were empty. Boxes covered the floor. He stood at the window, looking toward the harbor that no longer belonged to him. You should be home, he said. His voice had improved, but it remained rough, especially when he was tired. So should you. This is still my home for another week. Then we are both where we should be. He turned to face me. He had learned never to begin an important conversation while I was looking away. I think you should walk away from me. The words hurt, but not in the way my husband's note had. Kane had stood in front of me. He was giving me the truth, even though he believed it would cost him. Is that what you want? I asked. It is what I think is safer. That was not my question. He looked toward the empty shelves. I do not know what I have to offer you. That sounds like a financial statement. The money is mostly gone. The name will bring court cases, reporters, and people who blame me for things I did and things I allowed. I know. Lily deserves stability. Noah has been abandoned enough. I know. You deserve a life that is not built around another damaged man. My husband left a note because he wanted an easier life, I said. My parents left a note because they wanted to protect me. Do not become the third person who decides my future while calling it love. Kane's jaw tightened. I am trying not to trap you. Then do not push me away either. Ask me. He stepped closer, careful to remain in front of me. What do you choose? You. He closed his eyes briefly. Sadie, not the ports, not the money, not the name people feared. You. I do not know who I am without the power. I touched the scar on his throat. You were the man who thanked Lily inside a speech bubble. You were the man who answered Noah honestly when everyone else gave him promises. You were the man who let me speak without speaking over me. You were Kane before you were anyone's boss. His eyes shone. Are you sure? For the first time in my life, the choice is mine. I placed my hand against his chest. Yes. Kane kissed me with the same patience he had shown the first time. No urgency, no claim. Just a man who had lost the world that feared him and discovered that one woman still saw something worth choosing. A year later, Westbridge promoted me to patient safety coordinator. My job was to review medication failures, improve communication access, and teach medical teams that asking someone to repeat themselves was not an inconvenience. The coworker who once called my promotion sympathy attended my first training session. When I asked whether anyone had questions, she raised her hand and waited until I faced her before speaking. It was not an apology, but it was a beginning. My parents continued earning their way back into our lives. Noah stopped sleeping in his shoes 6 months after they returned. One night, I passed his room and saw them neatly placed beside the bed. I stood in the hallway and cried quietly, this time from relief. Lily grew used to Kane's rough voice and corrected anyone who interrupted him. He never tried to replace the father who had left her. He simply arrived when he said he would, attended school events, learned how to braid hair badly, and listened to every story she told, as if nothing else in the room mattered. Kane rebuilt 2 legitimate companies from what remained of his former empire. The offices were smaller. The cars were ordinary. Marcus complained constantly and stayed anyway. Kane proposed in my kitchen on an evening that looked nothing like the nights when people had left notes on the table. Lily and Noah were upstairs. My parents had gone home. A pot of soup simmered on the stove. Kane stood directly in front of me and took a ring from his pocket. No letter, no messenger, no decision made in my absence. Will you choose a life with me? He asked. His voice was still rough, but every word reached me clearly. Only if you always face me when you speak. He smiled. For the rest of my life. At our wedding, Kane stood close enough for me to hear his voice and see every word on his lips. Lily held my flowers. Noah carried the rings. My parents sat together in the front row, my mother wearing her wedding ring again. When it was time for Kane's vows, he took both my hands. I cannot promise I will always know the right words, he said. But I promise I will never accuse you of not hearing me until I have first made sure I was standing where you could. I cried before he finished. So did my mother. Kane smiled and continued. I promise never to use your strength as permission to leave you alone. I will ask before I protect, listen before I decide, and stay in the room when the truth is difficult. When it was my turn, I looked at the man I had found unconscious inside a broken car, the feared boss who had lost his voice, his empire, and the identity he once believed was all he had. I promised to see the man in front of me, I said, not the name behind him. I promised to remind you that losing power did not make you less. It gave you the chance to become more. We kissed, while Lily cheered loudly enough for everyone to hear. My first husband had left a note because loving me felt like work. Kane stood in front of me and gave me vows, because learning how to love me was the first life he had ever freely chosen.